Hey there guys, and welcome back to Finding Your Casual Magic. This is the series where we find beauty in the little things every day by retraining our brains to notice what is casually magic. Why we all look forward to the 1% of days in our lives that are extraordinary, like the birthday, the job promotion, but really most of the days in our lives are just ordinary. And wouldn't it be sad if we only allowed ourselves to feel joy 1% of the time? Today, we are talking about finding your casual magic through learning to accept yourself as you are. Most podcasts that you'll listen to will probably be offering some way to improve yourself, whether that is how to become more confident, more of an extrovert, how to optimize something in your life. And while that's amazing and we should always be striving to be the best versions of ourselves, one lesson that I've really learned in the last few years is that some growth can only occur when you stop trying. So today we're going to talk all things self-compassion, learning to embrace the messiness, the messy sides of who we are, rather than just wishing them away. And this episode feels especially timely for me because yesterday I felt very off. Like, knowing that I was coming to record this podcast episode for you today, I just found myself feeling very nervous and I had a bit of an emotional breakdown. I was just crying for a few hours, and I have these confidence blips where I really question why anyone should listen to my voice, why I should be the one sitting here with this microphone. And I almost didn't want to come today. What I had to do yesterday was learn to just show up as I am and accept that maybe I don't feel like the most confident version of me, but that's okay, and there's value in this version of me too. I was thinking yesterday how I could have tried to shift myself out of this mindset. I could have done a visualization to imagine myself as the most confident version of me. I could have done a breathwork meditation. But the hardest thing was actually just to let it be, to let myself feel small and to cry and to just offer myself compassion. So we're going to dig into more of that today and how self-improvement culture isn't always the answer. As you guys know, I love to start every episode with 2 rituals. The first is that we're going to listen to one of your guys' casual magic of the week. And today's is from Elisabetta. Hello.
Hi Jade, my name is Elisabetta and I live in Italy. A few days ago, my childhood friend, who basically lives abroad, came to visit me in the city where I'm currently studying. So I took her on a trip in the beautiful city center. When we arrived at the historical castle, we were talking about some really deep topics while looking at the skyline of the city. And suddenly it started raining heavily and the effect was astonishing. I felt so present, connected to nature and its beauty, while also feeling incredibly grateful to have that amazing person in my life who saw me growing and changing into the human being I am today after almost 10 years, and I truly appreciate her so much. This was my casual magic and I wanted to share it with you so badly because I love your energy, your mission, and I appreciate you so much. You inspire me into being a more positive, kind, and compassionate human being. Love you and have a nice day.
Oh my god, I can tell that I'm almost on my period because I'm here almost getting emotional. Thank you, Elisabetta. That's so kind of you. And thank you for so beautifully painting the picture of, I don't know, the rain starting to pour and being with your friend and just feeling this gratitude for life and for feeling so present. That's so beautiful. I always love listening to your voice notes. If you guys want to share yours, you can send them to us on @CasualMagicPodcast on Instagram. And the second ritual that I like to invite you to do every single episode is to take a moment to meditate with me. It's only 60 seconds. We're just going to do a little bit of breath work. You don't need to come back enlightened. But it's crazy how just taking a little bit of time to focus on your breath can completely change your brain, completely change your day. And so if you're able to, I'd really invite you to take a moment, sit with me. If you're commuting, feel free to just keep your eyes open, but tune into the surroundings and become a bit present.
So sitting comfortably, just take a big deep breath, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. As you breathe in, A sense of taking in lots of fresh air as you breathe out, gently closing the eyes, and just a sense of letting go of any stress, any tension in either the body or the mind. And as you sit there allowing thoughts to come and go, just following the breath, in particular the out breath. If you need to put your hand on your stomach, you can, but just following the out breath all the way to the end. Each time, just letting go of any stress, any tension. And then when you're ready, just gently opening the eyes again.
Welcome to the episode. One of the ways that I tend to myself in turbulent times is meditation. I've been meditating pretty much every day since I was 16. Obviously, I had random periods where I stopped meditating, but I've just consistently found that it is the habit that lets me connect to myself, to get back into my breath and body. And the first meditation app that I ever used when I was 16 is called Headspace. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. It's such an incredible app. They have options of meditations to help you get to sleep, for dealing with stress and anxiety. And I just find it is one of the most beginner-friendly meditation apps that you could use. And I feel so honored that they're sponsoring today's episode. And that means you can get 60 days of meditation completely free, which is crazy. If you guys are interested in meditating, or you've been wanting to pick up the habit and you don't know how to, then I highly recommend downloading Headspace, and you can use my code CASUALMAGIC. CASUALMAGIC, that is Casual Magic, to get a completely free 60-day trial of unlimited meditation. And if you guys are listening to the podcast, you can use the link headspace.com/casualmagic. That is Headspace, headspace.com/casualmagic. And guys, it honestly just means the world having such aligned sponsors like Headspace. So yeah, I feel so grateful to have them, and definitely go check them out if you're interested. Okay guys, picture this. You wake up, check your fitness watch to see how optimal your sleep quality was, ensure you do exactly 10 minutes meditation from your app, journal for gratitude, listen to a personal development podcast while making your superfood-filled smoothie bowl, then spend your commute listening to an audiobook about becoming your highest self. Does any of that sound familiar? It is so seductive to want to improve yourself, and it feels like in the modern day there is an exact script of all the habits and things you should be doing to become this quote-unquote best version of yourself. And in many ways, I think it's beautiful. I think it's amazing that we've never had access to so many ways to improve our lives, to live healthier lifestyles, to know how to better care for our mental health. It's been really positive for me, picking up so many habits that I've been inspired to from social media, from creators. However, what we're going to explore in this episode is the potentially darker, insidious side of striving to be this best version of yourself, and how perhaps in chasing a healthier, perfect, fit body, it can cause a rejection of your body right now. In chasing these perfect grades, you are rejecting the you right now who is struggling at school, and maybe you're calling yourself dumb, or you're berating yourself for not being where you want to be. I want to explore how self-improvement absolutely has its place, but it needs to come from the right motivations. A loving motivation of appreciating where you're at right now and having a goal and wanting to get there out of a place of love and curiosity, rather than disliking who you are right now, rather than coming from a place of shame or guilt or needing to change something fundamental. And how often one of the motivations that a lot of us use to improve ourselves is self-criticism, right? We're telling ourselves that we're not enough, we're not doing enough, we need to be better. I've not been to the gym in X number of days, can't remember the last time I meditated, can't remember the last time I journaled. And you're fueled by this kind of rage at yourself for not being good enough. And I want to argue that that is not the best motivation, and that there is a way that you can shift that into something more loving and positive. Okay, so I'd love to first explore why we feel this need to self-improve, and in particular, why Gen Z feel the need to self-improve. I think one of the main reasons that our generation is so obsessed with optimizing ourselves is social media. Why does everything come back to social media? We are so used to consuming curated lives. We normalize waking up every day, switching on our phones and watching someone's day unfold in a seemingly perfect manner, right? Especially because a lot of creators are making money off of portraying a certain lifestyle. So perhaps you're watching your favorite gym influencer hitting the gym, doing their perfect gym routine, they're looking amazing, they're having the perfect diet, or you're watching a study influencer, you know, they're working hard, they're doing their 8-hour study day. And you sort of come away from having scrolled on social media for a bit, perhaps noticing your own inadequacy in how you're choosing to spend your day. When you're so used to only seeing this highlights reel, you're not seeing the difficult parts of people's lives. You're not seeing the self-doubt. You're not seeing that even though they're doing all these habits, they might not actually be that happy or that healthy behind the scenes. And yeah, this culture of always seeing a performance of people's lives absolutely trickles into our psyche in how we view our own lifestyles and what we should be doing. Gen Z never feel like we're doing enough. We always feel behind. We always feel like we could be doing more. And what I find very interesting is that even Gen Z, we could admit that we're struggling. There are some statistics I'd love to tell you guys right now. So 41% of business leaders believe that Gen Z graduates are unprepared for the workforce. Savage, but Gen Z actually agrees, because despite being on track to be the most educated generation, 51% of Gen Z say that their education has not prepared them for the workforce. Gen Z employees experience 14% lower self-belief than their older counterparts. For example, when you make a mistake at work, there's something called radical responsibility, which is where you own your mistake. You take accountability and you learn from it. And taking radical responsibility is all about owning your power and, you know, accepting all the good, the bad, the neutral parts of life. And you know that outside factors might exist and there might be things that are unjust in the workplace, but you choose to take responsibility for what you can do and for mistakes that you might have made. However, when we have low self-belief, which a lot of studies show that Gen Z do, there's this negativity bias where we think that we are defined by our mistakes and therefore we don't want to own up to them. Gen Z run the risk of turning radical responsibility into something focused on self-blame and shame. And some people could argue that the antidote to a lack of preparedness for adult life could be solved by self-improvement culture, like reading more self-help books, going out of their comfort zones more. But Gen Z are also shown to suffer major anxiety over feeling like they're not enough. So there are studies that show that over 60% of Gen Z individuals report significant mental health challenges, with social anxiety being one of the most prevalent concerns affecting our generation. And so I think just playing into this narrative of Gen Z need to do more, Gen Z need to hustle harder, actually doesn't help because of this existing anxiety and self-hatred that Gen Z are already facing. And I think telling them to just change and do more, be more, will only be fueled by this pre-existing shame and anxiety. And I think that a lot of the messaging that would help would actually be around, finding sort of inner peace, self-compassion with where Gen Z are at, and blaming things not just on them, but on the systems around them and how maybe they could have been better prepared, whether that's COVID and the impacts it had on Gen Z, or workplace culture changing, difficulties in employment, with where the economy is, and sort of focusing on these external factors more than on Gen Z just needing to prove themselves and be better. Because I know from experience, so many friends berate themselves for just always not being enough and always needing to do more. And I just don't think it's the answer to tell us to like pull up our bootstraps and just do more all the time. We take actions to feel better by acting on our worst feelings of ourselves. Fear just creates more fear. acting out of an anxious place will actually only make you more anxious. You can't scare yourself out of being anxious. Some of those studies mention the education system as one of the reasons that Gen Z are struggling. And I personally think that this is another reason that so many of us always feel like we're not enough and we need to be doing more. The education system is designed around rote memorization. The general premise is there is a lot of predefined knowledge that students must simply learn, not really question, but just memorize it, learn it, and then repeat it in an exam at the end. Your intelligence is measured off of this point system, this grade system. And whatever you get at the end of school is sort of how clever you are, how enough you are, how prepared you are to get the kind of job, the kind of life that you want. The sort of premise of the system is that as you are not enough. And it's only when you work hard, when you receive this knowledge, that you can go into the world and sort of you live the life that you want to live. I know that myself, as someone who was a high achiever, who always felt like my grades weren't enough. If I got 90% on a test, I wanted 95%. If I got 95%, I wanted 100%. I was trained into this mindset of I can always be using my free time to do more. I can always be studying more. I can always be buying another revision resource. I can always be seeing my teacher more. And it was just an environment that never invited self-reflection of feeling like what's already good about me, you know, what innate abilities are worth celebrating, what parts of me that are kind of like this unique spark that I haven't worked for, what there can we celebrate? And I wish that we had an education system that really saw us as already whole, but then we're kind of inviting you to use that curiosity to learn more about the world, but that you don't just need to memorize everything in order to be respected in society. For me, this constant need to get better grades, constant need to get a percentage higher, then translated into when I started a YouTube channel, because I not only wanted 5,000 subscribers, the second I reached that, I wanted 10,000. And when I got 10,000 subscribers, I wanted 50,000. And I thought, oh my God, the second I get 100,000, I get that plaque, like then I'll be sorted, then I'll be happy, my dreams will have come true. But then, you know, you achieve that number and you achieve the plaque and you realize that you still don't feel enough. You can always crave more, you can always want more, you can always work harder. And obviously there's beauty to that mindset of working hard and having big dreams and goals. But I think it can create this emptiness where you learn not to celebrate yourself because you're always a self-improvement project that could still attain more, could still do more. It like never stops. The final reason that I want to look at as to why we're so conditioned to see ourselves as self-improvement projects that constantly need to be growing, constantly need to be doing more to better ourselves is being raised into a capitalistic, predominantly individualistic society. It's crazy because a lot of us, we can't even imagine being raised into an alternative society. So you don't even really know how much it's affected you. But having studied in collectivistic countries like Taiwan and Korea, I can really see how over there, they're raised to see themselves as part of a collective community. Like their skills, their habits, everything is to serve the greater good of everyone. Whereas in the West, we're raised to think of ourselves as islands, that our unique talents are to be honed for our betterment, to kind of create the life for ourselves that we want. Like all the benefits are for us as well. We've almost been raised to see ourselves as products that constantly need upgrading. Like in many ways, the basis of capitalism is that you should never be satisfied with what you have, because in order for the economy to grow and to function, you always need to want more. You need to be purchasing things. You need to be working harder, like putting more labor into the world so that more value can be created. There's always something to buy, something to fix, something to optimize. And when we translate that subconscious narrative that we've been raised into our whole lives onto our spiritual lives, our emotional lives, our mental health, it makes sense that we are almost seeing ourselves as like markets that need to be optimized for the best result, to create the best profit, the best output from all the work that we're putting into ourselves. And we're told that if we're struggling, it's because we haven't worked hard enough on ourselves. We haven't yet done the work. We haven't found the right therapist or the right tools, the right books. It's this hyper individualistic approach that says you solely are responsible for your healing. It's not about the society or culture that you've been raised into. It's not about the systemic failings of society. It's not about trauma that you may have been exposed to because of other people. It's solely up to you to sort yourself out, right, and improve your mental health. It's like, you've got to do that work, only you. And then social media fuels this narrative again by showing us transformations. We see these glow ups of people, right? Not just a physical glow up of someone maybe hitting the gym for a few months and they arrive having lost some weight and looking like this glowy version of themselves. But there's been recent trends of emotional glow ups, spiritual glow ups, where we're shown that if you do the work, if you do the healing, you read the books, the self-help literature, if you go to therapy, that you can arrive at this brand new version of you that you've worked so hard to achieve. And so for any of us who have not done that work, it feels like we're not enough. And it feels like we just haven't achieved the healed version of us yet. But as someone who very much has read a lot of the self-help literature, I have gone to a lot of therapy. I've done, the 10-day meditation retreat. I've thought a lot about everything from meditation to diet, like all the self-improvement things that you can think of. I wore one of these bloody Whoop watches for 2 years that tracks everything from my sleep to my heart rate, just every metric you can think about in your body. As someone who's done all of that, I would say that the more you chase this healed version of you, the more you reject all the growth that can come from listening to what is present in your body and mind right now. Like all the stuff that you just want to push aside because you just want to reach a version of you that is more positive or more confident, or just what you view in your mind as being better. Like, that's not actually where the answers lie. Often the answers come from just sitting in the discomfort of the right now. Like, the issue is when you start to see yourself as a self-improvement project, you become both the employee and the boss. And let me tell you, we're very mean bosses to ourselves. Like, I don't think any company would be allowed to have a boss that would be as mean to an employee as we are to ourselves. I don't know about you, but like, let's say you've missed a habit that you've told yourself you're really going to complete. Like, let's say you say you're going to meditate every day and you forget to meditate. The way that we can berate ourselves is horrible. It's like a boss screaming in your head, being like, you're so lazy, you can't stick to anything. You said that you were going to do this every day, and of course you didn't, because you give up on everything. You're useless, like you can't stick to anything. Everyone else seems to have it figured out. Why can't you? You go on social media, you see everyone else living their perfect lives. And it's like we become these performance managers, always tracking ourselves, evaluating. And if the line is not constantly going up in a linear fashion, we get annoyed at ourselves. When I first started to optimize my routines, it was like I had a life coach in my head who was never satisfied. They were always tracking and evaluating and monitoring, and I could always be doing more. And this internal critic was fear disguised as motivation. It was like this whip in my head, like whipping me to do more. And I would be calling that motivation, when really it was just, fear of not being enough, fear that like I just wasn't living a healthy life, was like ugly as I was. I need to make my body look prettier. I need to make my skin look glowier. I need to get rid of my acne. It was just fear, right? Of being judged, of being perceived as undesirable or ugly, and calling that motivation in order to change everything about myself. So with that being said, the growth trap is real. You get so focused on where you want to go, who you want to be, and who you're becoming, that you forget to live as who you are right now. There's also this bias that I think is very relevant called the expedience bias. And this is a bias where we often want to act really quickly rather than taking the needed time to receive clarity and understanding. So let's say you are feeling a really uncomfortable, big feeling. The temptation with this bias is to just seek some kind of instant gratification, to act quickly so that you no longer feel this discomfort, even if the action that you're taking maybe isn't the best thing for you or for the situation. And this can also be influenced by your past trauma or memories of experiencing this feeling and things happening that maybe weren't ideal in the past, and your body not wanting to repeat those same consequences. So the second that you feel that uncomfortable feeling, you just impulsively act to get yourself out of it. And it reminds me of yesterday when I was feeling these big, heavy feelings, these nerves, this anxiety around wanting to record today. The compulsion there was to just cancel it. You know, I was thinking about the shoot that I did a few weeks ago when my granddad passed away and my dog passed away, where I had this episode planned, you know, and then I showed up to the shoot and I was just really not okay. And I had this breakdown and I had to abandon the episode and sort of do an off-the-cuff episode of based on how I was actually feeling. And because that was the last episode that I shot in this space, I think the memory in my body was, if I'm feeling off in any way, if I'm feeling suboptimal, then the shoot day is going to be derailed. And so, yeah, the impulse was, I don't want that to happen again. I need to be feeling optimal, therefore want to cancel it. But I think what the expedience bias was actually, how that was actually playing out there was, I just didn't want to be uncomfortable. I didn't want to sit in the discomfort of the nerves and the self-doubt. And in reality, I probably would be okay. You know, today is a new day. You know, the shooting it's different every single time. And I think that's the beauty of recording this podcast for you guys, is that I do want to bring my real self every day and attempt to be vulnerable, even if I'm feeling not optimal. And so yesterday it was about not cancelling it. And it was about sitting with my feelings and just letting myself cry and letting them flow through me. And today, I feel very different. I feel a lot more comfortable, and I'm grateful that I sat with the discomfort of yesterday. This reminds me of an amazing quote that we heard in season 1. I don't know if you guys listened to the episode with Diego Perez, this New York Times best-selling author. He's an avid Vipassana meditator, and he's also a relationship expert. And one of the quotes that he said was, "Impulsivity is the past trying to take control of the present." So whenever you feel driven to act in an impulsive manner, whether that's texting something to your partner that you sort of know isn't the ideal thing to say, but you just impulsively feel like that's what you want to say in this moment. Whenever you feel that impulsion, often it is because of an experience in the past that you didn't like, and your body is feeling a similar feeling mirrored. And so to take control of the present and to stop it going in that direction, you act in a way that is from a past experience. And the difficulty here is learning to sit in the uncomfortable feeling and make a different choice. When you let feelings just flow through you, when you have self-compassion, where you accept where you are, you can make better choices. And another way that this impulsivity can manifest is impulsive productivity. This looks like feeling uncomfortable feelings and running to some incredible, sexy little self-improvement habits in order to ignore them. So, for example, you go through a breakup, rather than actually crying and feeling your feelings, you just hit the gym and you feel good about yourself through working those muscles, you know, and not really sitting in the pain and loss of this person that you loved. For me, I went through a breakup in 2020. I didn't want to sit with the feelings, and so I just became a workaholic. It was one of the best times for my YouTube channel ever. You know, that's the difficult thing with self-improvement journeys, is that they can be societally celebrated. You know, I was gaining all these views, gaining all these subscribers, people saying, "Oh, I love your content, Jade." But behind the scenes, I was actually miserable because I was ignoring all these big feelings and just channeling all of it into working constantly. Like, in the evening, I'd be ignoring my family and I'd just be going to my laptop and working. And in the short term, you can see positive results, but in the long term, you're not sitting with the underlying emotion. And the more that you suppress that, the more that will come out in negative, insidious ways. Like that prevented me from being open to love for a long time because I didn't properly process the emotions after that breakup. So I dare you to do the unsexy thing and to sit in the uncomfortable feelings. There's actually fascinating research which shows that interventions aimed at improving self-compassion may be the most important thing to preventing and reducing fatigue, stress, and burnout. But here's the paradox. When self-improvement becomes compulsive, you're actually moving away from self-compassion and you start to treat yourself like this broken machine that needs fixing and healing. And so we're going to talk about it more, but self-compassion is the answer. Accepting where you are and that you're not broken, you're just going through some discomfort. That is the key to real long-term success. Why is it that we treat ourselves like machines that need fixing rather than humans who need care? I don't know if you guys have heard of something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's been very popularized. It's this wonderful little pyramid. And it sort of says that we have different tiers of needs as humans that need to be met, and that the lower tiers need to be met in order to access the higher tiers. And the lower tiers are kind of your basic needs. So, for example, you need food, you need water, you need a roof over your head, you need safety, you need belonging, you need a purpose day to day. And then at the top of the pyramid, the thing that we're all trying to reach is self-actualization. And that's often associated with kind of spiritual alignment, feeling happy, feeling healed. When we're talking about this healed version of you in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's very much the top of that pyramid. And I think that's what so many people in Western society and a lot of Gen Z self-improvement culture is trying to reach, is this self-actualization. But when you do some deeper research, it's actually very interesting because Mr. Maslow, his entire concept of the hierarchy of needs was inspired by his time studying First Nations, Indigenous tribes. What's interesting is that they have a massively different idea of human needs being met to what Maslow then actually went and popularized. So First Nations perspectives believe that all humans come to this world already self-actualized, and that in many ways, that is like the step one, more than just basic needs being met, that kind of your spiritual fulfillment, your community fulfillment, that all of that is like the most important thing, and that all humans sort of arrive into this world whole. And that all those other needs being met sort of is built upon this wholeness. I find it interesting because Maslow's hierarchy is designed as a pyramid, as a triangle. And the assumption there is that you must meet the lower tiers of needs in order to access that top tier. But a lot of new models that have actually been based around First Nations perspectives would argue that human needs are not hierarchical, but instead interdependent. And so they start to model needs in a circle. So it's saying that you actually can't access like this feeling of belonging without also accessing self-actualization. And you can't access self-actualization without also meeting the basic needs. And so all of them are sort of interdependent in this web. And that sometimes some of them are stronger and other times others are stronger. And what I really enjoy about this circular model is how it's designed around humans living in community, and how when we live in community, basic needs can be met by others in our circle. It's not this individualistic perspective of, I need to make sure that I'm cooking myself enough food, I need to make sure I'm financially stable, I need to make sure I'm doing my meditation in order to meet all the needs. But that actually, when we live in community and we're supported by the collective, someone is looking out for your basic needs. Someone is organizing rituals that you can attend where you feel that your spiritual health is also cared for, and that it's not up to you to be thinking about your needs all the time, that in offering to help other people meet their needs, they'll also help meet them for you. I love this idea, very similar to the First Nations perspective. In Eastern philosophy, they believe that we are all already the Buddha. Like, they believe every single one of us is the Buddha, that we have it inside of us, and that we're all whole. We're just forgetting our true nature. I think there's something so beautiful about that. that it's not that we need to strive to become something. It's that we need to remember who we already are and who we may have forgotten that we are because of all the muddling influences of the society that we've been raised into. One of my first turning points in realizing that conscious self-improvement maybe wasn't where all the answers were was when I started doing things at university that were classically considered a waste of time, and that they were actually so important for my self-growth. One of which was clubbing. I don't know about you, but I feel like clubbing is often thought of as just like, I don't know, a way to blow off steam. Like, you know, you think of Freshers Week, you think, oh, it's kind of like, it's fun, but it's not like a deep way to get to know yourself or improve sort of the fundamentals of who you are. It's sort of just like, oh, a waste of time. And as someone who, you know, was really into productivity culture, hustle culture, always wanted to optimize best version of myself, I always thought that sleep was far more important than clubbing. And so I didn't drink alcohol for a long time until I was like 19. I didn't go to a single club when I was a teenager. I went traveling in my gap year around Australia, and I think I went to bed by midnight almost every single night. Like, I just really wasn't into party culture and didn't feel drawn to it in any way. But what was interesting is when I went to university, I was lucky enough to study in different cultures, and I was lucky enough to study with people from all around the world. I was offered a very new perspective on clubbing. I realized that it doesn't just have to be this hedonistic, like, let loose, drink a load of alcohol until you black out kind of thing. That actually there's something so liberating about just dancing with people and getting into your body and experiencing different types of music and having fun with friends. And when I lived in Buenos Aires, it was incredible how much nightlife was part of the culture. Shops did not open until about midday because, my God, people stayed up late. You know, people are having dinner at like 10 p.m. Clubs opened at 2 a.m. Can you imagine if you want to go clubbing, you have to arrive there at 2 a.m. You get back at like 5 or 7 a.m. Because it was such a big part of the culture. I was like, Jade, be open, let's go. And it was just, I felt like I witnessed new versions of myself through these environments where, you know, it wasn't just, I feel like in the UK, clubbing, you think of this almost predatory culture of men like coming up to you and groping you. You have to just like avoid the men because they're really scary as a woman. In other cultures, clubbing is just this way you feel so part of the crowd and the community, and everyone is, you know, listening to the same song and you're all just like dancing to it. And I found something so beautiful and healing in the experience of clubbing, and that made me question the so-called productive activities that one can do in order to learn about yourself. That perhaps it's not just going to a library and reading self-improvement books, it's also doing things that maybe other people don't think are useful for self-growth, but that you find are. You know, being explorative and curious to different hobbies and activities and how they can change you, and just following what you're drawn to in the moment. And then another huge turning point for me was finishing university. And, you know, I came out quite burnt out because university was a lot. I took on 1 million projects, said yes to 1 million things, and I decided to do less. I moved back to my family home. I decided not to instantly find my next job, and I spent a lot of time doing, quote unquote, nothing. Like, literally just sitting and staring into the nothingness and embracing this sort of meditative approach to life where, you know, your existence is not about doing, it's about being, was so transformative for me as someone who's always been a doer, who's been filling my calendar with activities, who's always been trying to optimize. Doing the opposite and merely learning to just be and to notice what's around me, and to invest in my relationships and just spending time with friends and family, and not needing to like have an endpoint to it. In the past, I would be so strict in my Google Calendar that every time I saw a friend or a family member, it would have a really defined endpoint. Like, I'm hanging out with a friend, it's at 3 p.m. and by 4:30 I'm on to the next thing. I'm like hitting the library or I'm with family and I can't let it go on for too long. So at this very defined time, I'm going to tell them that I'm going upstairs to my room and I'm working on my YouTube channel. But instead, forgetting the concept of time and forgetting the need to calendar every element of my life, and instead just being with myself, being with people, was so transformative. And I felt like I accessed a level of self-knowledge and relaxation that I could not have striven for, I could not have tried to achieve. It was something that had to naturally occur through doing less. And so I know many of you will be chasing self-esteem, because a lot of content on the internet is trying to encourage you to be the most confident, baddie version of yourself, in many ways, like what the psychological literature would call self-esteem, rather than something that I would love to strive for, which is self-compassion. A really high self-esteem can lead to something called the better than average effect, which is the need to feel superior to others just to feel okay about oneself. Honestly, I think I can relate to that. At times where I've really tried to be the most confident version of myself, it's felt like I have to be the best or I'm not okay. Like I have to be the best grade-wise, I have to be the prettiest, the funniest, the coolest, the most confident, the most interesting person in a room in order to be enough. That's a very fragile place to be, always needing to be the best. Having a comparative dynamic where you think that you're the best creates interpersonal distance and separation that undermines connectedness. If you think that you're better than everyone around you, it's very hard for you to feel connected to them. You know, if you think, oh, I'm the prettiest, it's hard for you to get on the level of other people, to be like, we are one and the same, and I see you and I humble myself and I'm completely a blank slate, open to what you have to teach me. It's hard to be like that when you think that you're better than everyone. Dr. Kristin Neff defines self-compassion as having three main components. A is self-kindness versus self-judgment. B, a sense of common humanity versus isolation. And C, mindfulness versus over-identification. And research indicates that self-compassion is strongly associated with psychological well-being. High levels of self-compassion are linked to increased feelings of happiness, optimism, curiosity and connectedness, as well as decreased anxiety, depression, rumination, and fear of failure. Self-compassion is strongly associated with emotional intelligence and wisdom. And one of the best ways that you can learn self-compassion is through the practice of meditation. Because what actually is meditation? I know nowadays you can see so many different types of meditation online. You can see a visualization meditation, you can see breath works that enliven your energy and make you feel really energized. But really what meditation was meant to be in Eastern traditions is a mere observing of what is. It's you closing your eyes and you observing your breath as it is. It's you noticing the sensations in your body, whatever they may be, pleasant, unpleasant, comfortable, uncomfortable, and just letting them be there. And the mere act of that is acceptance at its core, and thus is self-compassion, right? Because you're not asking yourself to be anything that you're not. You're not trying to improve yourself. You are merely allowing it. And so for any of you who are on your mindfulness journey, keep going, but also try not to fall into this trap that I think many of us can do in Gen Z, where we perform mindfulness rather than actually being mindful. Like I've definitely had moments of it where I pride myself so much on meditating every day. Like literally just that line, I meditate every day, that showing up and just meditating made me feel like good about myself, rather than almost humbling myself to that practice of allowing it to be whatever it needed to be in that moment. So yeah, I encourage you to keep meditating, and it doesn't need to look perfect. It doesn't need to be with an app. It doesn't even need to be guided. It can just be as simple as observing what is true for you right now and accepting it. And if you're not convinced enough about mindfulness, let me tell you this little fun fact. In 2011, Sarah Lazar and her team at Harvard found that mindfulness meditation could actually change the structure of the brain. 8 weeks of mindfulness-based stress reduction was found to increase cortical thickness in the hippocampus, which governs learning and memory, and in certain areas of the brain that plays roles in emotion regulation and self-referential processing. There were also decreases in brain cell volume in the amygdala, which is responsible for fear, anxiety, and stress. But notice what all of this stuff doesn't say. It doesn't say that mindfulness helps us become better people. It helps us become more aware people. And awareness, it turns out, is actually already enough. To receive all those benefits to your brain, all you must do is be aware. So the final thing that I want you to be aware of is the myth of the finished self. How would it feel to know that a healed you actually doesn't exist? What if healing isn't a destination, but a way of relating to the journey? I used to think that healing meant reaching this final place where I no longer felt anxiety, where I fully trusted myself, where I was completely confident, never had self-doubt. But instead, I'm starting to realize that healing is about owning all the messiness in the middle, all of it along the journey, right? It's having days where I don't want to show up to a podcast recording because I'm just doubting myself, and allowing that and knowing that that's just me being human, and that it doesn't mean I'm not a confident person. It doesn't mean that I don't have great things to say. It just means that, you know, I'm going through a little emotional blip and it's okay. And I just need to allow it to flow through me. And I don't need to extrapolate that as meaning anything about me. Just something that is in that moment. It just exists and I just need to be with it. The real you, the one that exists right now, includes all of you. The parts you love and the parts you wish were different, the growth and the resistance to growth, the wisdom and the confusion. And I just want to remind you of the really radical idea that you are enough as you are today, right? Think of the Eastern philosophy. There is a Buddha that exists within you. Think of the First Nations perspective. You are whole as you are. Not when you've healed your attachment style, not when you find the perfect love of your life, not when you become the perfect parent or the perfect daughter, but right now, as you are enough. And you're a curious human walking through the world. You're feeling all the feelings that come to you and you're doing your best. I think there's so much beauty in that. And there's this final wonderful idea I want to leave you with that is, you know what? You're actually going to grow whether you try to or not. Like, yes, you can try and optimize growth in a certain way, but the beauty of life is that often you can't control the ways in which you're going to grow, but my God, you will. You know, often we don't choose to lose people in our lives. For example, we don't choose to lose a parent or a grandparent. But inevitably, those things happen and we learn lessons. We don't choose to be rejected from our dream university, but we're going to grow from it. And even if we choose to do absolutely nothing, you know, we just sit around and exist all day and just chat with friends or go clubbing, whatever. Even if you don't try, you're just doing nothing, you will still grow. You will still learn lessons. And I think that's one of the beauties of being human. And yes, you should, of course, still have goals. You should still try and be all the incredible things that you want to be. But can it come from a place of already feeling whole and already feeling enough? That is my invitation to you. Can you always try to act from a place of love rather than lack? From a place of curiosity rather than compulsion? From a place of enoughness rather than emptiness? And tie it all back together to the theme of this podcast. This is where casual magic lives. It's not in the grand spiritual enlightenment experience of, I don't know, taking a psychedelic or something and claiming that you know all the answers of the universe. It actually exists on the random Tuesday afternoon when you're washing the dishes and you're feeling some kind of uncomfortable feeling that maybe you don't want to feel, and it's choosing to accept it. And it's choosing to know that you're growing in the mere act of having self-compassion in that moment. And rather than wishing away that feeling, wishing you were happier, just allowing it to be, paying attention to the feeling of the water on your hands as you're washing the dishes and, you know, not needing to change it. And I think there's something so simple but profound in that choice. This week, I invite you to practice something called conscious non-improvement. Can you notice when you feel this desire to improve or upgrade yourself? And what happens if you just don't? If you decide not to do the thing you know you're meant to, that you're quote unquote meant to to be the best version of you? What happens if you just decide to sit with those feelings right there and then? What would happen if you allowed yourself to be exactly as you are for 1 minute, or for an hour, or for that whole day? If you just told yourself, today I am allowed to be however I am. I don't need to rise to the occasion of anything. I don't need to mold myself into what I think that work needs me to be. I actually don't need to change. I can just be as I am, and that is enough, and that I will be accepted. If I accept myself, then I will be accepted by others too. As always, I love to end every episode with some journal prompts so that you can integrate the lessons of today's podcast. So if you want to, feel free to grab a notebook or your notes app. The first question would be, what are your core values, and do your actions often align with them? What is one quality about yourself that you struggle to accept? How can you begin to embrace it with self-compassion? What are 3 limiting beliefs and 3 uplifting beliefs that you have about yourself? How might you challenge your limiting beliefs? And I just wanted to share a moment of casual magic from my week. So yesterday, my lovely mum actually drove me. We just had like a little road trip in the car near Brighton, and it was sunset, and I was just crying my eyes out, as one does. And I'm trying to get better at letting my parents into my feelings. I used to be very, very good at hiding them. I was sort of letting her see the full extent of how much I was crying, and she just had the cutest idea ever. She was like, okay, Jade, what if we decided that the next 5 songs that are going to play on the radio are going to give you all the answers that you need. So we're going to pay really close attention to the lyrics of these songs, and whatever lyrics jump out at you from the next 5 songs, we're going to piece them together, and that's going to be your message from the universe. I thought, well, let's do it. And my mum was playing smooth radio, and I will be honest, I don't know a lot of old songs, so it was actually great because I didn't know a lot of the lyrics already, so I had to really pay attention to hear them. And it was just gorgeous because it felt like the lyrics I was noticing were speaking right to how I was feeling in that moment. Like, there was one song, I'm really bad at music, so I'm not gonna remember what song it was, but all they were singing is like, it's sad, so sad, you're in a sad situation, you're so sad, and just like going on about how sad I was. And I was like, you know what, yeah, I am really sad, I feel really seen, thank you, song. So that was just very wholesome, and just the sky was so wide open, and watching the sunset was really healing, and I felt very present. So that was my casual magic this week. Thank you guys so much for coming to today's episode. And it's ironic because at the end of every episode, I normally tell you guys that you are enough exactly as you are. But I feel like in today's episode, that is especially pertinent. I don't know if it's sort of been drilled into you enough throughout today's episode, but I really do hope that you feel like you are enough as you are. And I know that it can feel illogical when you know that you have places to go, goals you want to achieve, ways that you want to be that maybe you aren't today. But there was a version of you in the past that dreamt of being who you are today. And I think you owe that past version of you some gratitude for being who you are right now, and that in many ways you are exactly enough. You are the dream you that a past version of you wanted to become. So pat yourself on the back. Thank you so much for coming. I love you guys. See you next week.